Be me. Greater than 22. I still bite my nails when I'm stressed, hide it by shoving hands in pockets. I failed my driver's test 3 times, told everyone I just didn't care to drive. Been working nights since I was 14, warehouses, gas stations, anything to keep money flowing. Denver mornings blur together. Cheap coffee from Federal Boulevard, exhaustion stitched into my hoodie. Mom's paycheck from the clinic on Colorado barely covers rent, so I can't slow down. Emily's 18, East High School, still a kid in my eyes, deserves not to carry this. So I write in this beat-up black notebook under my bed, just to unload. Better I burn out than see them struggle. I scribble, hand cramping, ink smudged. Emily thinks I'm cold, distant, like I don't care, but she doesn't know the truth. I swallow her anger, lace up my boots, and clock in again without saying a word. March rolls in, cold air biting, snow melting slush across cracked Colfax sidewalks. I crash into bed past midnight, then drag myself up before dawn, bills waiting on the table. Unpaid utilities glare at me, so I sharpen a pencil and fight numbers until sunrise. Sometimes Emily sees me with papers everywhere, thinks it's schoolwork, rolls her eyes, walks away. I want to tell her, this is the homework that keeps the lights on, keeps food here. But my throat locks every time, pride stronger than honesty, so I just let her think. I take extra shifts at UPS off I-25, my palms raw from moving pallets. Every dollar I save goes to her textbooks, even if I skip dinner again. When friends call, I lie, say I'm busy studying, while I'm hauling boxes at midnight. My sneakers have holes, taped underneath, hoping nobody notices as I load another truck. I close the notebook with a sigh. One day she'll understand this distance was love. Until then, I keep silent, carrying the weight so she never has to feel it. Sometimes I hear Emily slam her door, yelling that I never care, never show up. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, her words cutting deeper than any warehouse shift. If she only knew the nights I hauled pallets so she could buy supplies for class. I picture her at East High, backpack full of books I silently paid overtime hours for. She doesn't see me nodding to the gas station clerk at 2 a.m. again. She doesn't feel the ache in my back when I bend after 12 hours lifting. All she sees is me walking out, laces tied, leaving mid-sentence, choosing work over her. I could tell her the truth, but it would sound like excuses or a guilt trip. So I write it instead, filling the notebook with words I'll never say out loud. Each page becomes a substitute hug, ink where my arms should have been years ago. Not enough, but better than nothing, at least for now, at least until later. Because silence feels safer than breaking her innocence with truths she doesn't deserve yet. March dragged on cold, snow piled high near Colfax curbs, but I barely noticed anymore. The UPS warehouse off I-25 swallowed my life whole, shifts stacking higher than my sleep. I watched guys clock out laughing, heading to bars, while I dragged home half dead again. Bills still waited, electric, water, rent, reminders that quitting wasn't an option, not for me. I sharpened pencils like weapons, scribbling numbers until my vision blurred and head tilted forward. Sometimes Emily peeked in, saw the stacks of papers, thought it was homework, rolled her eyes. I wanted to tell her, this homework keeps the lights on and food in the fridge. But my throat shut every time, pride choking honesty, silence always easier than truth. So I let her think I was selfish, that I didn't want her around at all. The notebook carried it instead, black ink soaking up exhaustion, turning pain into quiet confessions. If she ever found it, maybe then she'd understand why her brother always seemed absent. Until then, I keep clocking in, carrying the weight, letting the pages speak for me. Some nights the weight felt unbearable, my body screaming to stop, but quitting wasn't an option. I'd drag myself home, collapse in a chair, stare at my blistered hands until they stopped shaking. Mom peeked in sometimes, her eyes soft, but she never said a word about it. I knew she saw, moms always do, but she let me carry it on my terms. Emily usually ignored me at those hours, scrolling on her phone with headphones blasting loud. I told myself that was good. It meant she wasn't worrying, wasn't sharing my load. Still, sometimes I caught her glare, frustration boiling, convinced I didn't care about her at all. I wanted to yell, "I'm doing this for you." But the words stayed locked inside. So I scribbled in the notebook, ink tearing pages, every line a scream I couldn't voice. Let her be mad. I wrote. Better that than seeing her feel guilty for me. And with that lie, I tightened my boots and walked out the door again. Another night, another shift, another piece of myself traded for their safety and comfort. Weekends weren't breaks. They were double shifts at UPS, my body begging for rest I ignored. Friends posted ski trips up in Breckenridge, neon drinks in Lodo, while I stacked boxes. I stopped checking social media. It only reminded me of the life I gave away. Instead, I counted pay stubs and receipts. Emily's new school supplies lined up on the table. Mom whispered thank yous while folding laundry, tired hands moving, relief hidden in her soft smile. That was enough to fuel me through another Monday morning, no matter how broken I felt. I caught myself in the warehouse bathroom mirror, shoulders slumped, looking twice my actual age. But then I pictured Emily at East High, smiling with books I'd already paid for. That thought carried me through the graveyard shifts, the aches, the endless hours without sleep. The notebook swelled thicker every week, pages curling, ink blotted with exhaustion and stubborn hope. If she never knows, maybe she'll forgive me later, I scrawled before tossing on my jacket. And with that promise, I walked back into the night, ready to do it again. One March afternoon, I left early for another shift. Emily barely looked up from her phone. I paused at the door wanting to explain, but what's the point when I'm always leaving? Her sigh echoed in my head the entire drive toward the warehouse off I-25. Forklifts beeped, boxes slammed, my muscles burned while I drowned myself in routine again. By midnight my back screamed, my hands raw, and I wondered how long I could last. I told myself I was young, strong, but the mirror showed shadows too heavy for 22. Still, every paycheck mattered, rent covered, bills handled, Emily's textbooks stacked on the counter. Every shift felt like a love letter, even if it looked like absence from the outside. I hid the notebook back under the bed, pages swollen with words I couldn't say. Secrets kept her safe, I believed, but part of me feared the day she'd find it. If she read even one page, she'd see love disguised as distance and silence. But I didn't know if she'd forgive me for the years I'd seemed cold. Days blurred together, weeks vanishing into a cycle of shifts, pay stubs, and sleepless nights. I skipped meals, skipped birthdays, skipped being young, trading it all so they wouldn't have to. Friends stopped calling, first out of patience, then habit, until they simply forgot I existed. I told myself I didn't mind, that family mattered more, but loneliness crept in anyway. Sometimes I'd drive down Colfax at 2 a.m., neon buzzing, kids my age laughing. I'd grip the wheel tighter, repeating, one day Emily will have better than this. That thought kept me steady when exhaustion begged me to walk off the job. Mom's face at payday reminded me why. Her relief worth more than any night of rest. Emily's slammed doors reminded me too, even if they hurt more than my aching hands. I thought I was building walls of protection, but maybe I was just building distance. The notebook got thicker, pages curling, ink bleeding like my body, worn but determined. And each entry ended the same. She'll see it one day. She has to. One night, I stumbled home past midnight, shoulders aching, eyes heavy like they carried bricks. I kicked off my boots quietly, careful not to wake Mom or Emily upstairs asleep. The house wasn't peaceful, just too quiet, like a reminder of everything I was missing. I sat at the table, open bills stacked high, and forced my brain through numbers. Pens scratched, receipts piled, my head nodding forward until I nearly collapsed over paperwork. Sometimes I wondered if any of this mattered, if they'd even notice what I carried. Emily's laughter with her friends replayed in my head, her teenage world far from mine. I told myself that was good, that she deserved carefree nights instead of this grind. But the ache cut deeper every time she shouted, "You don't care," and I stayed quiet. So I poured it into the notebook, ink blotting from tired hands shaking on the page. Better she thinks I'm cold than sees me break, I wrote before slamming it shut. Then I buried it again, under the bed, secrets hidden in dust and wood. Weekends weren't rest, they were more shifts at UPS, my body screaming for hours of sleep. Friends hit bars downtown or snowboarded in Breckenridge while I hauled pallets in silence. I stopped checking social media altogether. It only reminded me of what I'd given up. Instead, I counted pay stubs, stacked them like proof Emily's future was still moving forward. Mom's eyes softened whenever she saw her daughter's new supplies on the table, and I breathed. That alone kept me going. even as my body cracked louder with every passing month. I caught my reflection in the break room mirror, slumped shoulders, hollow eyes, 22 looking 40. But then I pictured Emily walking East High's courtyard, smiling, arms full of books I bought. That thought carried me through graveyard shifts, kept me standing when exhaustion begged me to quit. The notebook thickened, its pages warped with ink, soaked in my private confessions. Every line ended the same. One day she'll see it wasn't neglect, it was love. And if that day never came, at least she'd have everything I worked to give. Spring came to Denver, blossoms along Colfax blooming while I dragged through another graveyard shift. People my age planned concerts and weekend trips, but my life was bills and grocery lists. At UPS, guys joked about beers after work, while I clocked out half dead and quiet. I felt decades older, though technically I was only a few years older than them. Emily's backpack filled with new books numbed the sting for a little while, made it worth it. Her world kept moving forward because mine stayed stuck, holding the weight she never saw. Sometimes I thought about telling her, showing her the notebook, finally breaking the silence. But I couldn't stand the idea of guilt in her eyes if she knew. So I muttered busy when she asked, tied my boots, and walked back into night. The notebook grew heavier, pages warped with ink, like it was carrying years I was losing. It became my second spine, holding me upright when exhaustion tried to fold me in half. And in those hours, I prayed she'd someday see what words couldn't get across. One morning, I came home to the smell of toast and coffee already waiting for me. Emily stood there smiling awkwardly, pretending it was nothing, just breakfast she decided to make. I froze, coffee mug in hand, wondering if she knew more than she let on. She waved me off quickly, saying, "Eat. You'll be late," voice too casual to feel real. I ate slow, suspicion and gratitude mixing until I couldn't tell one from the other. For the first time in years, I felt noticed, though I didn't understand why exactly. Days later, my bills were stacked neatly before I even touched them, her handwriting on envelopes. Mom noticed too, smiling in that way moms do when they know more than they say. I still wrote in the notebook at night, but the words began to change. Instead of "they'll never know," I caught myself writing, "maybe she already does." The thought scared me and comforted me all at once, more than any paycheck could. I wondered if silence had finally cracked without me realizing it, and maybe that was okay. One night, I dragged myself home late, dropped my jacket, and found a plate waiting. Mac and cheese, steaming, simple, but it hit me harder than any paycheck ever could. I looked at Emily, words caught in my throat heavier than anything I carried at work. "Why are you suddenly doing this?" I asked, voice rough from exhaustion and disbelief. She smiled softly, eyes steady, and said, "Because you're my brother. You deserve love too." Something cracked inside me, walls I'd held up for years shifting just enough to breathe. I ate slowly, each bite tasting like home, like rest, like I wasn't alone anymore. Her kindness said more than my notebook ever could, more than I had strength to write. I wondered if she had read it, if my secrets had slipped without me knowing. But even if she had, I didn't ask, didn't risk breaking this fragile piece. For the first time in years, my shoulders eased, my body finally allowing itself to rest. And that night, silence felt lighter, like maybe it wasn't hiding but simply holding space. After that, mornings changed, toast waiting, coffee poured, her laughter replacing slammed doors and eye rolls. I noticed bills already organized, her handwriting on notes reminding me what I'd usually forget. She called during my breaks, asking what I wanted for dinner, making sure I ate. Mom saw it too, her smile carrying quiet relief, but she never asked questions. I still worked the same hours, still dragged myself through warehouses, still came home half dead. But now there was more waiting for me than silence or frustration, and it mattered. I came home to a sister carrying part of the weight I thought was only mine. The notebook shifted too. Entries less about loneliness, more about gratitude I didn't know how to say. "She sees me." I scribbled one night, ink blurring from tears I didn't expect. I never thought support would come from the same voice that once yelled I was absent. But maybe that's family. Anger, misunderstanding, then healing in ways you'd never expect. For the first time, I believed I wasn't carrying it all alone anymore. Weeks passed, and our rhythm shifted into something new, something I hadn't felt in years. Emily joked more, left breakfast waiting, even stayed up just to hand me dinner sometimes. I still kept the notebook under my bed, but its weight didn't crush me anymore. The pages no longer screamed loneliness. They carried softer words, gratitude I couldn't say out loud. Sometimes I caught her looking at me differently, not frustrated, but proud in this quiet way. I wondered if she had read it, if she knew more than she let on. Part of me feared it, but another part prayed she had, desperate to be understood. I didn't ask, didn't confess, just let her actions answer what words never could. Mom's eyes sparkled whenever she saw us together, like she knew without needing proof. For the first time, I felt all those years of sacrifice had actually built something. Even if Emily never admitted anything, I knew she finally saw me for real. And that was worth more than every paycheck, every shift, every piece of youth I lost. Now mornings start with laughter instead of slammed doors, coffee instead of silence and cold stares. I lace up my boots for work, but the weight doesn't feel as crushing anymore. Emily still hasn't said anything about the notebook, and I don't push her to. I leave it where it's always been, under the bed, pages waiting for discovery. Maybe one day she'll open it again, see the truth in my messy handwriting. If she does, I hope she understands every page was my way of being present. I might not have been the brother she wanted, but I was the one she needed. And now, seeing her laugh across the kitchen, I know she finally feels it too. Love doesn't always look like free time. It looks like calloused hands and overdue bills. But it's still love, stubborn, imperfect, heavy with silence, and stronger than anything else. If you've ever carried weight for family in silence, would you confess or keep it hidden? Tell me, would you let your actions speak or risk breaking everything with the truth?